Good morning, friends. So welcome to another Sangha Roundtable here at Empty Cloud Monastery. Today we have a special guest from Germany. So Aya Phalanyani, who's been a bhikkhuni for many, many years now. And 12?
11.
11 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's how long I've been a bhikkhu. Great. So we match up there. So Aya Phalanyani, who has been a bhikkhuni for 11 years and is currently the abbot of Anenja Vihara, which is a bhikkhuni monastery in southern Germany. So she is joining us from southern Germany. And today she'll be leading us in a discussion of the Angulimala Sutta. Aya Phalanyani will start off by reading from the sutta and making some remarks, and then the three of us will spend some time discussing the sutta together. You're also welcome to type questions into the live chat, and we'll answer your questions towards the end. So please, Aya, whenever you're ready, please go ahead and get us started.
Okay. So thank you for having me, and bear up with me. I'm not native English speaker, but well. So Angulimala Sutta is from the Majjhima Nikaya. It's number 86, called in English with Angulimala. And I'm reading the slightly modified version of Bhante Sujato. So have I heard. At one time, the Buddha was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindrika's monastery. Now, at that time, in the realm of King Pasenadi of Kosala, there was a bandit named Angulimala. He was violent, bloody-handed, a hardened killer, merciless to living beings. He laid waste to villages, towns, and countries. He was constantly murdering people, and he wore their fingers as a necklace. Then the Buddha robed up in the morning and, taking his bowl and robe, entered Savatthi for alms. Then, after the meal, on his return from alms round, he set his lodgings in order and, taking his bowl and robe, he walked down the road that led to Angulimala. The cowherds, shepherds, farmers, and travelers saw him on the road and said to him, "Don't take this road, ascetic. There's a bandit named Angulimala. He's constantly murdering people, and he wears their fingers as a necklace. People travel along this road only after banding closely together in groups of 10, 20, 30, 40, or 50. Still, they meet their end by Angulimala's hand." But when they said this, the Buddha went on in silence. For the second time and the third time, they urged the Buddha to turn back. But when they said this, the Buddha went on in silence. The bandit Angulimala saw the Buddha coming off in the distance and thought, "This is incredible. This is amazing. People travel along this road only after banding closely together, yet they meet their end by my hand. But still, this ascetic comes along alone and unaccompanied, like he had beaten me already. Why don't I take his life?" Then Angulimala donned his sword and shield, fastened his bow and arrows, and followed behind the Buddha. But the Buddha used his psychic power to will that Angulimala could not catch up with him, no matter how hard he tried, even though the Buddha kept walking at a normal speed. Then Angulimala thought, it's incredible, it's amazing. Previously, even when I've chased a speeding elephant, horse, chariot, or deer, I've always caught up with them. But I can't catch up with this ascetic, no matter how hard I try, even though he's walking at a normal speed. He stood still and said, "Stop, ascetic, stop!" "I have stopped, Angulimala. Now you stop." Then Angulimala thought, these Sakyan ascetics speak the truth. Yet, while walking, the ascetic Gautama says, "I've stopped, Angulimala. Now you stop. Why don't I ask him about this?" Then he addressed the Buddha in verses. "While walking, ascetic, you say I've stopped. And I have stopped, but you tell me I've not. I'm asking you this, ascetic. How is it that you've stopped and I have not?" "Angulimala, I have entirely stopped. I've laid aside violence towards all creatures. But you can't stop yourself from harming living beings. That's why I've stopped and you have not." Oh, at long last a hermit, a great sage who I honor, has entered this great forest. Now that I've heard your verse on Dhamma, I shall live without evil. With these words, the bandit hurled his sword and weapon down a cliff into a chasm. He venerated the Holy One's feet and asked him for the going forth right away. The Buddha, the compassionate great hermit, the teacher of the world with its gods, said to him, "Come, monk." And with that, he became a monk. Then the Buddha set out for Savatthi with the venerable Angulimala as his second monk. Traveling stage by stage, he arrived at Savatthi, where he stayed in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. Now at that time, a crowd had gathered at the gate of King Pasenadi's royal compound, making a dreadful racket. "In your realm, your majesty, there is a bandit named Angulimala. He is violent, bloody-handed, a hardened killer, merciless to living beings. He has laid waste to villages, towns, and countries. He is constantly murdering people, and he wears their fingers as a necklace. Your Majesty must put a stop to him." Then King Pasenadi drove out from Savatthi in the middle of the day with around 500 horses heading for the monastery. He went by carriage as far as the terrain would allow, then descended and approached the Buddha on foot. He bowed and said to one side. The Buddha said to him, "What is it, great king? Is King Senior Bimbisara of Magadha angry with you, or the Lichavis of Vesali, or some other opposing ruler?" "No, sir. In my realm, there's a bandit named Angulimala. He is violent, bloody-handed, a hardened killer, merciless to living beings. I shall put a stop to him." "But, great king, suppose you were to see that Angulimala had shaved off his hair and beard, dressed in ochre robes, and gone forth from the lay life to homelessness, and that he was refraining from killing living creatures, stealing, and from lying, that he was eating in one part of the day and was celibate, ethical, and of good character. What would you do to him?" I would bow to him, rise in his presence, or offer him a seat. I'd invite him to accept robes, alms, lodgings, and medicines and supplies for the sick. And I organize his lawful guarding and protection. But, sir, how could such an immoral, evil man ever have such virtue and restraint? Now, at that time, Venerable Angulimala was sitting not far from the Buddha. Then the Buddha pointed his right arm and said to the king, "Great king, this is Angulimala." Then the king became frightened, scared, his hair standing on end. Knowing this, the Buddha said to him, "Don't fear, great king. You have nothing to fear from him." Then the king's fear died down. Then the king went over to Angulimala and said, "Sir, is the Venerable really Angulimala?" "Yes, great king." "What clans are your father and your mother from?" "My father was a Gagga, and my mother a Mantani." "May the Venerable Gagga Mantani Buddha be happy. I'll make sure that you're provided with robes, alms food, lodgings, and medicines, and supplies for the sick." But at that time, Venerable Angulimala lived in the wilderness, ate only alms food, and owned just 3 robes. So he said to the king, "Enough, great king, my robes are complete." Then the king went back to the Buddha, bowed, sat down on one side, and said to him, "It's incredible, sir. It's amazing how the Buddha tames those who are wild, pacifies those who are violent, and extinguishes those who are unextinguished. For I was not able to tame him with a rod and a sword, but the Buddha tamed him without rod or sword." Well, now, sir, I must go. I have many duties and much to do. Please, king, go at your convenience. Then King Pasenadi got up from his seat, bowed, and respectfully circled the Buddha, keeping him on his right before leaving. Then Venerable Angulimala robed up in the morning and, taking his bowl and robe, entered Savatthi for alms. Then, as he was wandering indiscriminately for alms food, he saw a woman undergoing a painful obstructed labor. Seeing this, it occurred to him, "Oh, beings suffer such filth. Beings suffer such filth." Then, after wandering for alms in Savatthi, after the meal, on his return from alms round, he went to the Buddha, bowed, sat down on one side, and told him what had happened. The Buddha said to him, "Well, Angulimala, go to that woman and say this: 'Ever since I was born, sister, I do not recall having intentionally taken the life of a living creature. By this truth, may both you and your baby be safe.'" "But, sir, wouldn't that be telling a deliberate lie? For I have intentionally killed many living creatures." "In that case, Angulimala, go to that woman and say this: 'Ever since I was born in the noble birth, sister, I don't recall having intentionally taken the life of a living creature. By this truth, may both you and your baby be safe.'" "Yes, sir," replied Angulimala. He went to that woman and said it. Then that woman was safe, and so was her baby. Then Angulimala, living alone, withdrawn, diligent, keen, and resolute, soon realized the supreme end of the spiritual path in this very life. He lived having achieved with his own insight the goal for which gentlemen rightly go forth from the lay life to homelessness. Venerable Angulimala became one of the perfected. Then Venerable Angulimala robed up in the morning and, taking his bowl and robe, entered Savatthi for alms. Now on that time, someone threw a stone and hit Angulimala. Someone else threw a stick, and someone else threw gravel. Then Angulimala, with cracked head, bleeding, his bowl broken, and his outer robe torn, went to the Buddha. The Buddha saw him coming off in the distance and said to him, "Endure it, Brahmin. Endure it, Brahmin. You've, you are experiencing in this life the result of deeds that might have caused you to be tormented in hell for many years, many hundreds or thousands of years." Later, Venerable Angulimala was experiencing the bliss of release while in private retreat. On that occasion, he expressed his heartfelt sentiment. He, who once was heedless, but turned to heedfulness, lights up the world like the moon free from a cloud. Someone who had Someone whose bad deed is supplanted by the good lights up the world like the moon freed from a cloud. A young mendicant devoted to the Buddha's teaching lights up the world like the moon freed from the cloud. May even my enemies hear a Dhamma talk. May even my enemies devote themselves to the Buddha's teaching. May even my enemies associate with those good people who establish others in the Dhamma. May even my enemies hear Dhamma at the right time. From those who speak on acceptance, praising forbearance, and may they follow that path. For then they surely wish no harm upon myself or others. Having arrived at ultimate peace, they look after beings firm and frail. For irrigators guide the water, and fletchers straight narrows, carpenters carve timber, but the astute tame themselves. Some tame by using the rod, some with goads and some with whips. But the poised one tamed me without rod or sword. My name is harmless, though I used to be harmful. The name I bear today is true, for I do not harm to anyone. I used to be a bandit. The notorious Angulimala swept away in great flood. I went to the Buddha as a refuge. I used to have blood on my hands. The notorious Angulimala. See the refuge I found. The attachment to rebirth is eradicated. I've done many of the sort of deeds that lead to a bad destination. The result of my deeds has already hit me, so I enjoy my food free of debt. Fools and half-wits devote themselves to negligence, but the wise protect diligence as the best treasure. Don't devote yourself to negligence or delight in sexual intimacy, for if you are diligent and practice absorption, you'll attain abundant happiness. It was welcome, not unwelcome. The advice I've got was good. Of teaching that are shared, I encountered the best. it was welcome, not unwelcome. The advice I've got was good. I've attained the three knowledges and fulfilled the Buddha's instructions. Yes. So this sutta is one of my 84,000 favorite suttas. Um, and it has some great points to make, and it gives me quite a lot of courage, I would say, because we're talking here about a serial killer, a mass murder, who became a saint. And so I'm thinking, if he could do, if even a serial killer can do that, can become a saint, so there are chances that those who are not as bad as Angulimala was have also chances. No, so for me this is very encouraging. This is why I firstly like this sutta very much. But there are plenty of points that are very interesting and giving a clue as to how we could do it. So how we could really approach, even if we have some bad karma to deal with. So even then, it should be possible, reading this, it should be possible to leave it all behind and become enlightened. And I can so much relate uh, for the situation. Well, here it's depicted as a situation where the robber or the murderer runs after his victim and can't catch up with this. But I do know the situations from dreams. I don't know if you ever have experienced this, that you are running and running in your dream and you just can't catch up. So I can kind of relate to this. And I do not doubt that the Buddha had the power to do this. Why should I? It's written here, so I trust that was so. And I don't want to debate it, but even for me, it would be possible um, to see it as a state of Angulimala's mind that was just obstructing him from getting forward. But then, when in some sentences later, when the murderer meets up with his potential victim, who happens to be the Buddha, he stood still and yelled at the Buddha, "Stop!" And then the Buddha said calmly, "Well, I have stopped. Now you stop." And I think this is a very important point for all of us to understand. We need to stop. We really need to stop when we want to go further. If we want to go on on our path to enlightenment, we need to stop. That's what we need to do. That and we're always trying and doing things, no? We're trying to push and to advance and to get forward, and the opposite is necessary. So this is one point I would like to discuss. And then Well, we can actually discuss everything, but for me, that's one that's one point of really of interest. And so this perplexity in the comments, it is said Angulimala has become a stream enterer there at that moment when he met the Buddha. And that moment has transformed his entire life already. So he was not an arahant yet. He was only stream enterer, but he was transformed entirely. And he threw away everything that he had at that moment, his pride and his weapons. And that is the next point that we need to acknowledge when we want to approach enlightenment. We need to throw away and let go of everything that we have and that is obstructing us. So this, for me, is the next very important point here in this sutta. And then, of course, everybody was afraid of him, and people complaining that they come, that the Angulimala even comes into their midst, into Savatthi, to live there. And this is another very important point. The Buddha did not take Angulimala somewhere hidden and said, well, now you're a monk, you go somewhere off where people don't see you, and there you stay. So no, he put him right in the middle of where the people were. He have, or the relatives of the people who he had murdered. So he had him face his karma. He had him face the power of their feelings also. He didn't say to anybody, well, you don't touch Angulimala now. It just happened as it happened, according to karma. There was nothing like organized or prepared. So I think that is, for me, another great point. We should let things happen, and we should just be there and face our karma, or stand for what we have done and see what results it brings. And then also, I find King Pasenadi's reaction quite nice. So he does not believe that Angulimala could actually be there as a monk, and says, well, then I would treat him like a monk and and venerate him and rise in his presence and offer him a seat and so forth. And I wonder if he really have thought or believed that Angulimala would have become a monk, that he would have said the same things. But he really believed the Angulimala never could have done it. Well, so what? I can say anything. But anyway, he did really mean that in the end. And it seems that Angulimala really, really was serious about what he was doing. And that turns out, that comes out when he speaks to King Pasenadi in this calm manner. And when he says, enough, I don't need more, I have enough robes, I don't need to be sponsored, and so on. And also that comes out, that becomes visible when after he met that woman going on alms round, the Buddha says him a sentence, probably meaning in the first place what he said in the second place, but Angulimala was really concerned that it was not clear enough and that people could be very angry that he lied. So he was concerned that he could speak out a deliberate lie. So this sentence is used up to today as a blessing or as a parita, as an auspicious chant when a woman is in labor. And we used it once. I don't know if it worked, but it actually did work. The woman was in a very difficult labor, and they had to do a C-section finally. But we chanted that for her, and then the childbirth was easy afterwards. So it possibly is really a very powerful chant. I don't know. I wouldn't take that upon us, but then rather on the chant. But then let's go on. So Angulimala then is secluded and practices and goes and becomes one of the enlightened ones. He becomes an arahant. And then people beat him up, but not just a little, but it seems he has been beaten up quite badly and comes back. And this is also what the Buddha said then at that time. Is very powerful, I would say. And it's for me, it helps tremendously. I used to have a lot of self-pity and complaining and drama here and there. And so yeah, it's just endure it. It's whether you're enlightened or not yet. There's only one thing that we can do with things that we don't like, or that seem to do us harm. So we can endure it. That's what we can. We can't escape the situation, most probably. But this endure it has helped me personally very, very much in my practice. So it's never as you want it. So you think, oh, well, now I sit until I'm enlightened and so on. And then first thing, your feet fall asleep, and then somebody comes in bothering, and then your back hurts, and your knees, and so forth. So, well, you can either give up or endure. And, well, for me, the choice is very clear that I want to make. I'm not saying that I'm always doing it, but I try to. And then Angulimala's verses, I love them so much. They are so wonderful because there we also see a form of transformation of him and kind of this relief of being protected by the Dhamma and wishing his enemies to hear the Dhamma and he says this not about like I would say out of self-pity, for example. He says it because he understands that the Dhamma is the only thing that can prevent beings from harming others. So he wishes, out of compassion, he wishes that for them. And this is really a great transformation. So whereas I would say that as a small being and saying, well, may my enemies be close to the Dhamma and hear the Dhamma. Maybe I say that out of fear and out of dread or something, but he says it out of a freed heart. And then he gives us good advice. Where is it? Fools and half-wits devote themselves to negligence, but the wise protect diligence as the best treasure. Do not devote yourself to negligence or delight in sexual intimacy. That is, well, I almost changed that because I think it's not only sexual intimacy, but rather sense pleasures. But I left it. I didn't want to change too much. I changed a few things in Bhante Sujato's text, but I didn't want to change too much. So, but for if you are diligent and practice absorption, you'll attain abundant happiness. I mean, that's a promise. He got it, and he knows certainly what he was speaking about. So we can trust that is true. So for those reasons, this sutta is really a great encouragement and teaching for me. Yes. So I would now say if we can discuss things, if you want.
Great. Well, thank you, Aya. I really appreciated your reading and reflection on this sutta. And I had just a couple comments I wanted to add to a couple of the points that you brought up. Mm-hmm. So first off, what in my opinion is the kind of cardinal point in this sutta. So the most important exchange was the Buddha telling Angulimala to stop. And I also recall this from my first few years of Buddhism when I was practicing in the Zen tradition. This was one of the few Pali suttas that would be talked about frequently, and it was because of this statement, stop. And the explanation that I remember hearing that made a huge impact on me was that the Buddha was saying stop, not just in terms of stop killing people, but stop in the sense of let go of all sankharas, like let go of all mental formations, let go of all activities, involvements, engagements, attachments. So very similar to the, again, one of the central instructions in the practice of silent illumination practice is to let go of all things and cease all involvements. So the Buddha is giving that same kind of very direct instruction, like stop what you're doing. The Buddha is saying drop all of your activity, involvement, attachment, engagement, drop all your sankharas, because then you can see reality as it actually is. And in that direct seeing, then compassion and morality arise naturally. So you don't need to force Angulimala to practice the precepts. You just need to get him to see reality directly, and precept practice follows naturally from that. So I always found that kind of Zen approach to explaining the Buddha's instruction to Angulimala very potent. And The other similar point, you'd pointed out the thing about Angulimala letting go of his weapons. And I had actually never given any thought to that particular line of the sutta until you highlighted it. So thank you for bringing that point out, because then that got me thinking more like, what is the symbolism of that? What's the deeper meaning of that? It's like, well, what are his weapons? His self-defense mechanisms, his self-identity, who he thinks he is, his habitual ways of behaving and interacting with the world and relating to the world and relating to himself. All of that is symbolized in his weapons. So I think that part of the sutta does have a literal meaning, and that he did literally throw away his weapons. When you decide to stop killing people, then murder weapons are not of much use anymore. But also this deeper metaphorical meaning in that he was throwing away every part of his self-identity and his former habits, and committing to taking on a completely new way of approaching life, a completely different approach to the world. Again, you had many wonderful comments to make, but those were two parts in particular I wanted to add a few comments. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Yes. Yeah, I couldn't say it better.
Okay. And Ayasoma, do you have some thoughts on this discourse?
Yes, well, first of all, thank you to both of you venerables for sharing all these insights on the Angulimala Sutta, which is also one of my thousands of favorite suttas. It's great to be with other venerables who are enthusiastic about the Pali Canon. But yes, what I actually, aside from all the points that you raised, what also I really love a lot about this sutta is actually how karma is dealt with. So usually in Buddhist circles, we're very we rush very quickly to, kind of explain to people what their supposed karma is that is creating whatever their experience is. And usually we do it when they're experiencing something painful or something, not particularly something that is difficult to endure. So we start, telling them how they've done awful things in their past lives, etc., etc. But both the Buddha and both Angulimala actually seem to have a bit of a different approach. So the Buddha never actually stops Angulimala before he actually stops himself. And he doesn't tell him, oh, you've done all these awful things in the past and you're going to go to hell. But rather, actually, that teaching comes later on, actually, when Angulimala is already fully enlightened. And when Angulimala sees the woman experiencing difficult labor, he doesn't go up to her and addresses her by telling her, all the awful things that she has done in the past that might have caused, her painful experience in the moment. But rather, actually, there is the teaching of stopping committing bad deeds. And both the Buddha encourages that to Angulimala by telling him to literally stop making bad actions. And also Angulimala says the same thing fundamentally to the woman, not encouraging her to stop doing unwholesome actions per se, but rather actually inspiring her by leading by example, by saying that since he has taken the path of the Buddha, he has not committed any unwholesome actions. And in that moment, she has that release from suffering. So she was safe. And so was her baby, it says in the text, right? So is it just a physical thing, or is it actually also a mental safety, perhaps? Like, is she and her baby, are they how are they entering this path? There's a sort of, it's a really beautiful teaching of how by leading by example, we can actually inspire others to stop doing terrible deeds that then will create harmful consequences in the past, in the future. So I find this very inspiring, and also as a lesson for myself and for others that are practicing in this path of understanding that, yes, it's good to perhaps reflect that definitely our experience of suffering, of oppression or whatever things can happen to us in our lives. So we've probably done bad things in the past. But perhaps we shouldn't be too quick. We shouldn't rush to monk-splain or lay-splain to others why they are experiencing what they are experiencing, but rather just focus on purifying our conduct. So this is what I wanted to contribute that I find very inspiring from the sutta.
Yeah.
I think you've covered
I
everything.
think this is a very important point, because we are always trying to explain, and then we are not stopping ourselves. So it's really important to see that this stopping needs to happen at any moment. And yeah, so what I find very interesting about this karma related part, that when the how to say, through some experience of, for example, enlightenment, our karma can actually change. I've read that once in the Abhidhamma, but here's a very practical example for those who don't like the Abhidhamma or say it's not valid or so. This is a very practical example for how somebody has created the most probably worst karma possible and then purifies it, and by that it's enough to be beaten up, maybe almost to death, but well, it's changed entirely. It's not sitting in hell for ages or eons, so it's just being beaten up. So now also this, I think, is quite encouraging. So we can actually, when we practice good, and when we go for it and become somewhat, or when we come and not become enlightened, then we can trust that karma has still to happen, but also that it might be transformed.
Okay, and we also have some questions from the remote audience. Do the Venerables have any other comments they want to make to each other before we start looking at the questions from the audience?
I just want to mention that our lay resident Eva has a question. So maybe if we can start with that one. I just typed it in so everybody can watch it. So, well, yes, as you just answered it, but maybe Venerable wants to add a few things. So is Angulimala's karma of killing so many beings diminished by becoming a monk, or because he stopped killing? It seems he got an easy way out.
Maybe I start, because I was just at the end speaking of that very point. And I think it's not an easy way out. To becoming an arahant is not an easy way out. You can't say that. It's a way out, because it really transforms your karma. As I said, it's mentioned in the Abhidhamma that this is possible. I don't remember the Pali word for that kind of karma and what is happening there, but it is said that the karma through some strong energies, say, like becoming enlightened, or through some heavy actions like murdering somebody, can change drastically. So for somebody who stops murdering, it becomes possible for that person to become an arahant. Whereas a person that has been good throughout life, but then becomes a murderer by chance, that could always change the situation drastically, and that person would end up in hell possibly, or whatever. I don't know. I don't want to predict anyone's karma, but what I want to say is it can change drastically by what we do. It's not only that by being a monk or becoming a monk, but because of the whole thing, because of dropping everything, because of stopping everything, as Bhante Sudaso explained in the beginning, because of stopping all khandas. And yeah, so enough said. The others now.
Wonderful. Thank you, Venerable. And Anita was asking the Pali word for harmless. So it's ahimsakoti. I'll put it in the comment.
Right.
Yeah, ahingsako, which is also sometimes used as a monk's name. So I know a British bhikkhu named Ahingsako, so named after the transformed Angulimala.
Yes. There's also, I think, Bhikkhuni Ahimsa.
Yes, actually, she's at Aloka Vihara.
Right.
And maybe Bhante Sudaso, if you want to select the other questions, that would be great.
So Buddha Ruchi asks, hearing Venerable read the Buddha's response to Angulimala regarding what Angulimala should say to the woman, I thought rebirth is every second. Kindly discuss that portion of the sutta. Yeah, so in a very real sense, rebirth is every second, because every second we make a new choice, and the choice that we make transforms our mind. Yeah, it's true. You become a new person in every moment. In every moment, we're choosing the kind of person that we want to be, and therefore the kind of experiences that we're going to have. So this is very important to keep in mind. So rebirth, of course, does happen in the longer term sense, in terms of past lives and future lives. But also it happens in every moment in terms of the transformative decisions that we make in every moment.
Excuse me, I just became a little bit distracted because I discovered at the side, I was on private chat, and now I discovered the comments. So I was distracted. I'm sorry for that.
Okay, and Ayasama, would you like to pick the next question?
Sure. Michael also asks, why prisons, revenge, punishment, rehabilitation? The sutta might have very practical implication in this very world. Just a thought. Venerable Phalanyani, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I mean, it's right. I wouldn't put probably anybody into prison. But I'm not the one who decides that there are prisons. And so we have to deal with prisons. And those who bring people in prisons also have to deal with karma. And I think really this sutta could give a hint, or gives a good example of how people can be transformed. Most probably it's not working for everybody. There are certainly people who, through karma, through one of the other reasons of the 24 that they are might not be able to be transformed into arahants. And we know how difficult it is for us to become arahants, and or even to become better people. So it is difficult. We cannot just rely on that. But still, I don't believe that people should go to prison. It's just kind of a thing that we do because we do not know better. As a society, we should know better. And we should try rehabilitation, for example, with Buddha Dhamma, in my opinion. And there are trials of, or not only trials, there are studies by Goenka Ji. He has gone to prisons and practiced meditation with murderers, serial killers, and they have transformed. Not everybody, but many of them. So it actually does work. And yeah, but still, we're not those people who could change the way society is in that sense.
Thank you, Venerable. And Anita has a question. Would you say diligence would translate to practice of mindfulness and absorption to samadhi?
I think diligence here is the translation of the Pali term appamada, which more literally means not negligent. So I like to translate that as vigilant or diligent, but the literal meaning is not negligent. And yeah, absorption is one of the ways that Bhante Sujato likes to translate the word samadhi. So I usually prefer to translate samadhi as mental unification or mental collectedness. But I mean, or just concentration. That's, in my opinion, concentration is also perfectly fine. Yeah, absorption is samadhi, or sometimes uses it for jhana as well, I think. I don't recall.
Thank you. And Venerable Phalanyani, do you have anything to add, or should we take another question?
No, I was just nodding and confirming that I think what Bhante Sudaso says.
All right, great. So maybe you can take this next question from not Sudaso, but Suds. A little bit similar. And our friend Sudsum says, if you're taking any questions, Venerable, can you please comment on if you wish something with a pure heart and wish for the good of another based on the truth of Dhamma, would it come true?
Well, that depends. As everything, we do have to deal with everything in every moment with a dependent origination. So if the time and the conditions are right, then it comes true. And a wish will fulfill. If the conditions are not right at that moment, it might come true later when the conditions are right. But it's not said that if we are 100% with the Dhamma, we always get what we want. That is not so. There are too many factors that come into consideration, and that could obstruct the coming true of something that could come true if the obstructions weren't there.
Thank you, Venerable. And Kumo was asking, you kind of have addressed it already, but maybe there's more. Can you explain what happened to the karma of killing 999 people? How did that karma not manifest for him?
Well, it did manifest for him, but what comes to mind for me is the simile in another sutta that the Buddha uses of a freshwater lake. So he says how if you take a lump of salt and you put it in a cup of water, then the water becomes extremely salty. But if that same lump of salt is put in a freshwater lake, then the lake doesn't taste salty. The salt is still there, but it's diluted by that huge body of fresh water. So in the same way, Angulimala still had the kamma of having killed so many people, but the good kamma of becoming a monk and attaining awakening was so incredibly vast and strong and powerful that it greatly diluted the bad karma of having killed many people. So he still got the bad karma. It was just greatly reduced in power because it was diluted by the incredibly good karma of having practiced the path for awakening.
Thank you, Venerable. And Phalanyani Dinko asks, is it possible that Angulimala accumulated good karma in his previous life so he could meet the Buddha and become an arahant?
That is probably so. I would say so.
Great. And Jayanta says, his main reason was to fulfill the teacher's wish, not his. This could be the reason he attained Nibbana.
Well, this comes, I believe, in the commentaries. It says that Angulimala had a teacher who had told him that killing people was a way to develop wisdom. So the commentaries give this idea that Angulimala wasn't killing people out of sheer bloody-mindedness, but rather that he was doing it from the wrong belief that it was a path to spiritual development. I have to say I've always found that explanation pretty doubtful. I'm really not on board with that explanation. It seems pretty suspicious to me. I'm more inclined just to take the sutta at its own face value, that Angulimala was in fact a murderer. And that more likely, the reason he was able to attain Nibbana was, as the previous questioner asked, the power of having done a lot of spiritual practice in past lives. So Angulimala was already very close to awakening, but he had this unfortunate habit of killing people that was keeping him back.
And essentially that karma from past lives creating the conditions for him also to be able to understand the teachings of the Buddha. Well, be born in the time of the Buddha is already like incredible good karma, and also being capable of understanding the Dhamma, and then being capable to stop fundamentally doing whatever action, unwholesome action one is doing.
Yeah, I mean, he was able to address the Buddha in verses, no? So he was not completely uneducated. So he must have had some good karma in a sense.
Yeah, maybe actually a very interesting reflection of how our condition is always of mixed karma or mixed vipaka, both mixed karma and mixed vipaka. That we've done pretty much everything in the past, so it resurfaces, and some are karmic obstructions that prevent us to make good actions, and some instead create good conditions for us to be able to practice the Dhamma, receive the Dhamma, and become better people. All right, it looks like that's the last question for today anyway. And thank you so much, Venerable Phalanyani. It's so wonderful seeing you online, and hopefully we'll see you in person soon. And we also hope that you will come again on our channel. We haven't confirmed it yet, but maybe, possibly, if not every Wednesday. Every Wednesday?
Possibly every Wednesday. That would be fine too.
Oh. Well, let's talk about that. No.
All right.
Okay. Thank you so much for inviting me, and for your comments. I love them all. So see you again.
All right, so we can end with 3 sadhus. Sadhu,
Sadhu, sadhu.
sadhu. And for all the viewers, please check the website of Anenja Vihara. So it's spelled Anenja Vihara. You should all know how to spell Vihara. Vihara. I'm not sure if with COVID, Anenja Vihara is open to the public these days, Venerable.
It is, yes.
All right, so you all have.
Well, we don't have too many people. We can have up to 4 guests right now. Oh yeah, right. There's our link.
Great. Yes, I put it in
I
the.
haven't found the option to insert a comment, but there it is.
I'll also
Great.
highlight it so people can see it. So you can all go on Anenja Vihara's website and check out the beautiful work that Venerable Phalanyani and the other bhikkhunis in Germany are doing. It's really beautiful to see from afar how incredibly the Dharma is flourishing in Germany. Well, we also have a German bhikkhuni here at MP Club for the Vasa, Venerable Vimalanyani. So it's and now there is a full actually bhikkhuni Sangha in Germany.
Yes.
Forum.
Yeah, there is.
All right, so Anumadana. All right, well, thanks again for everyone for watching, and we'll end the broadcast right now, and we'll hopefully meet in a couple of hours again at 7:30 p.m. We'll have Ajahn Punadamo, who will be continuing his teachings on dependent origination.
Okay.